Hello, James. Welcome to Reeling In by Cinema Express, the entertainment division of the New Indian Express. We are happy to have you on our show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
And first of all, welcome to the Indian film industry.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's been fascinating.
Before I start with the questions, tell me how your lockdown has been. Are you in Scotland right now?
No, well, I actually live in England, in London, but I'm at the moment in Budapest, in Hungary, filming Jack Ryan um, for Paramount. Yeah, I've been here for about 3 months, and I've got another 7 weeks to go. So I'm getting very used to Budapest, which is a beautiful city, and getting used to some incredibly hot weather.
Of course, there's a lot to talk about Jagame Thandhiram, but before we get to that, I'm sure you would have had an impression about the Indian film industry before you signed this film. And now that you've started one, has that impression changed?
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, Gopi. Um, Although in my career, uh, I've never really planned anything. Things have just come towards me, and I've done them. It's just I've just left it up to the universe to bring me things. And this was the first time that I was given this opportunity, and I've always been interested and fascinated by the process of filmmaking, and I've worked with Japanese actors and other European actors, American actors, obviously, but it's and this was just another experience for me, to work within and a much broader experience, because I was working within a completely different industry, the massive uh, industry that India has. So yeah, I was intrigued to see what it was like, and it was a terrific experience. It was very different to what I expected, um, but extraordinary and terribly very enjoyable. And I did get out to India, not for any length of time particularly, which was the one downside to it. I would dearly have wished to have worked in India for a month or a couple of months, to get just to get a feel of where I was. But that is, and nonetheless, it was terrific.
I heard that your agent wasn't really keen on you signing this film. So, how did this happen?
Yeah, like when I guess uh, your agent always has they have a better plan for you than you have. As I said, I just let things come. I do believe that when you put things out to the universe, it will conspire to bring you
Brilliant.
things that teach you things. I do believe that. But my agent had, she deals with the UK, with America all the time, and that's where she saw my career. And she thought, well, why would you want to do an Indian film? And my reply was, well, why not? Give me a reason why I shouldn't. Why shouldn't I learn about another industry, or how they interpret the storytelling that we all do as filmmakers. To me, that's fascinating, and also to have a chance to visit India, which I'd never done before, but had long wanted to. Um, and as I say, it was only for a week or 10 days or whatever it was, but I was very grateful even for that.
Speaking about your time in India, I guess you were in Rajasthan a few years back. So, how was that experience? Did you like our local cuisine?
Well, I don't know if you know, Gopi, but I was brought up in Scotland, although I've lived in London for and America for many, many years. But Indian food is the national food of Scotland. You know, everyone in Scotland loves Indian food. It's just across the board. So I thought I had tasted some great Indian meals. I wasn't expecting the fantastic meals that I had in Rajasthan. It was extraordinary. The food was just off the scale, you know. And you're talking to somebody that I eat Indian food at least once a week. And so for me, the only thing is my family wasn't with me because we all love Indian food. And I didn't want to tell them how good it was because they would have been really, really jealous. So yeah, that was fantastic.
Totally. You had earlier said that you really liked Karthik Subbaraj's narration of your role from Jagame Thandhiram. What about it really intrigued you the most?
Well, it was funny because when I met Karthik, we met in Soho in London at my club, and Karthik came along and we had some tea, and he started to tell me the story. And obviously, as many Indian directors do, he had written the story. He was going to be directing it, you know. And we sat down, and he told me the film shot by shot by shot, all the way through the film, everything that was going to happen. And he also had a storyboard. And usually, if a director shows you a storyboard in the UK, it's like Matchstick Men. You know, it's very, very basic. These were like a work of art. I mean, I wanted to buy them and put them on my wall. It was so nice. I just thought, my goodness, if the storyboard is this good, the film's going to look amazing. But the main thing was that Karthik's enthusiasm for the story. You know, obviously, I think he'd sat with that story and worked on it for 4 or 5 years. You know, it was very, very close to him. And he had created this character of Peter, who's this horrible gangster, racist, nasty guy. But there is an element within him that when he meets the character played by Dhanush, they start to like each other, despite this man being a racist. He actually realizes that he sees a bit of himself in this other guy, and that they have this warmth towards each other, which I found about the only redeeming part of Peter, that he recognized in another guy some sort of duality of common ground. So that was interesting. Yeah, so I play lots of good guys and quite a lot of bad guys. So yeah, I was used to people like Peter. So yeah, it was good.
Just like you had mentioned, your character Peter is a racist and doesn't really like the idea of having immigrants in his country. How important and relevant do you think such a film is in today's world?
Peter is things of attitudes. Can I tell you a quick story, Gopi?
Sure, please.
I haven't told many people this, but a few years ago, I went back home to Glasgow, and there's a very, very good Indian restaurant there called Mother India, very famous in Glasgow. Superb food, really good. And I walked up. I was filming, and my family wasn't with me, and I decided to go and have a meal at Mother India's. So I sat down at a table on my own, and this middle-aged Indian guy came up, and he said, "Could I have your order, James?" Now I thought he must have recognized me or whatever, and so I gave him my order, And he looked at me and he said, don't you remember me? I said, no, I can't. I don't know. Oh, excuse me, but I can't. And he said, James, it's VJ. And I said, VJ? He said, from the Shish Mahal. Now, to explain, 30 years before, when I lived in Glasgow, I used to always go to this Indian restaurant called the Shish Mahal. And VJ was the head waiter there. And I used to see him twice a week at least. And then I went away and didn't see him for 30 years.
Wow.
Then he said two interesting things. He said, and I used to phone before to give my order and then go and collect it. And he said, let me tell you your phone number. I said, what? He said, when you lived in Glasgow 30 years ago, your number was 332-6830. He remembered my phone number for 30 years. That I found extraordinary.
Wow.
So I said to him, as we were talking, and you know, he was a friend of mine, you know. Anyway, I said, how are you? You know, what's happening? How's your family? First of all, I said, how are you doing? He said, he said, I'm just a waiter. You know, I've been a waiter all these years. I went, oh, great. And we talked about people we knew. And then I said, how's your family? And he said, my daughter is a cardiologist in Manchester, and my son is a surgeon in London.
Wow.
And I said, VJ, what do you mean you're just a waiter? And that explained everything to me. That man coming to my country and the legacy that he had given to my country was incalculable. And I thought the humility of the man to say, I'm just a waiter, but to have produced two children who had done so well and do such great things for people, it moved me terribly. Anyway, that's my story about VJ. And that's my antithesis to characters like Peter.
You mentioned how you worked in a lot of other film industries across the globe, and now that you started in Indian film, how different is this when compared to the others?
It's a lot more, how would you put it? Utilitarian. You know, like there are a lot of hands and they do a lot of work. You know, it's very labor intensive. In a way, in the West, because of technology within the industry, it has sort of, to some extent, separated the role of the director and the role of the actor. You know, so often directors will sit in what they call now the video village, which is like a tent with all these cameras where they see the shot. And it's you feel a bit separated from the director. Whereas in India, it's much more hands-on. He's right there, you know, he's very much part of the process and very much the auteur, as the French say. You know, it's his piece, and you're there to try and facilitate that. So yeah, and just having so many people around to do stuff was extraordinary, you know. And my and you do get treated so well. I mean, it's embarrassing sometimes how well you're treated, and they have a delightful sense of respect, which I found very touching. I really, really enjoyed. I really appreciated that. It was quite special.
When we interviewed Karthik, he said that he got someone specially on board to write the lines for you alone. Did that really come in handy? How was that experience?
Yes, I felt very comfortable in that, you know. And Karthik's a very easy director to work with, you know. It was, you know, sometimes were things where he'd be speaking to Indian actors and then he'd have to switch to English to speak to me, sort of thing. But no, it worked out really well, you know. And you know, we did a lot of ADR afterwards, and which is not as usual in the West, but it's used a lot in Indian filmmaking, which was interesting. But yeah, it was a fairly relaxed shoot, really.
Considering you're the most senior person on the sets, how was it to work with Dhanush and such a young team?
Oh, it was great fun. Great fun. Dhanush is a lovely young man. We got on very well together. Um, yeah, we had a few laughs, and yes, it was great to sadly to be the senior uh, actor in the film. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Um, maybe second or third senior might have been better.
I'm not sure if you know this, but your colleague from Narnia, Michael Madsen, started an Indian film called Silence.
Did he?
Yes, yes. And he played the antagonist in that as well. And now that you made your Indian film debut, how do you see the bridge narrowing between the Indian film industry and Hollywood?
I've got a friend who's just about to. Well, he was going to be in India now, but it's because of the pandemic he's had to delay things. But he's doing a series out there about the East India Company, I think it is. But there is so much. There is so many stories, so many locations. I mean, it's crying out for collaboration. Absolutely crying out for it, and it will happen. It definitely will happen. I mean, I think I'm very glad to hear that Michael Madsen, who's a terrific actor, joined in. But you know, it's like people breaking through the door. You know, first there's one person, then another person, and then one filmmaker and another filmmaker. And I think that collaboration, especially with technology, is, you know, going to open up a great big market. And that can only be good, not only for the film industry, but for our countries and our cultures as well, to realize the incredible riches that we can share. Our culture can give so much to India. India can give so much to us. And I think that can only be of benefit for us to become closer as humanity.
As someone who's been in the film industry for more than 50 years, some of the films that starred you that I enjoyed the most were Braveheart, Troy, Ben-Hur, and even the recent Game of Thrones, and they all seem to be action flicks. Is there a genre that excites you the most?
Well, Gopi, you get sort of when you're young, when you're big and strong, you know, you tend to get typecast into things, and then when you get typecast into things, it's really hard to get out of them, you know. But to be honest, I've always enjoyed riding horses. I love horses, and I've always felt very comfortable in action movies, you know, but it's because it's a comfort area. You know, I know what I'm doing, so you feel nice and relaxed when you're, you know, like if someone put me in a car and said do this, I would be really nervous. If somebody put me in a horse and said do that, I'd be fine. I just want to feel where I'm. It's my safe. It's my comfort zone. So yeah, I've always enjoyed action films and stories with big mythic subject matter. I think those, you know, I don't know if you know of Joseph Campbell, the writer and philosopher. You know, he was big into the myth that we all follow. You know, that one story of the hero's journey. You know, which is really the basis of any story or film or whatever. It's about a journey. So I've always felt comfortable when that is a very obvious arc of the film.
Speaking about Game of Thrones, your character from it, Jean Moment, was a fan favorite, and he did have a tragic ending. Considering how 5 new prequels have been announced for the Game of Thrones, is there even the slightest chance that we can see the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch once again?
I don't think so, Gopi. Uh, no, I haven't been asked. Now, I don't know if I'd do it, to reprise a part. But it was a wonderful character to play. As I was saying before, to play characters like Joe Mormont, a man of absolute integrity, of honor, of courage, of decency, integrity. That, for me, is a privilege to play characters like that, because he is aspirational, I suppose, and heroic. And we all need heroes. We all need figures who are courageous so that we can emulate courage.
And finally, as someone who's been a part of TV shows, films, series, and now a dad to OTT release, I'm sure you would have seen the evolution of the entire film industry. How has this journey been, and what's your biggest takeaway from it?
Yeah, I have seen huge changes since I first came into the industry. It's been very interesting. I was talking to someone recently. I think it was John Krasinski, but we were talking about Braveheart and how it has a sort of timeless quality to it. And I think one of the reasons for that was it was one of the last films that didn't have any CGI or a tiny, tiny part. There was hardly any CGI. We did have 3,500 extras doing battle scenes. It was the real thing. Not the real thing, but real people. And I think in the genre that's sort of spun off from the film industry, video games being made into films and vice versa, there becomes a sort of something unworldly about those movies, which lack impact. So I think technology within the film industry has to be used judiciously and only at certain times, because at the end of the day, what one is trying to do, no matter on a vast scale, like Game of Thrones or some big film like that, or on a very small scale, like I'm going off when I leave Budapest, I'm going to Ireland to shoot a film with a Finnish director, for 6 weeks out in the wilderness, and it probably won't cost the cost of a week on Jack Ryan, but the same thing is happening.
True.
You're trying to tell a story to somehow connect with your audience and share the human experience. That's what it always comes down to. That it doesn't matter the scale, the amount of money that's being spent on something. It's what that something says that's important.
Thank you so much for this wonderful interaction, James. And once again, welcome to the Indian film industry. I'm hoping to see you once again in a Tamil film. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.